365. Myself Srija. So today you're going to learn about the hindbrain and also the anatomy and physiology of the spinal cord. So what is hindbrain? The hindbrain, it's a lower part of the brain, just located just above the spinal cord. So it connects the brain to the spinal cord and it controls the vital body functions that happen automatically. So what functions like breathing, balance and coordination. So this hindbrain, it is divided again into cerebellum and pons. So what is cerebellum? So you can see the picture of the hindbrain at the right side. You can find the cerebellum over here and also the pons. So this cerebellum, it founds below the occipital bone at the back of the brain. Right, here, over here you can find the occipital lobe. So this is situated below the occipital lobe at the back of the brain. So what are the functions of the cerebellum? It maintains the balance, posture and coordination. It helps in smooth and accurate muscle movements, for example, walking, writing or playing an instrument. So it ensures muscle control and fine tuning of the actions. So coming to the pons, the next structure next to the cerebellum. This pons, it lies in the front of the cerebellum and above the medulla oblongata. So what is the function of the pons? It acts as a bridge connecting the cerebrum, cerebellum and the spinal cord. So it controls the breathing rhythm and it helps to regulate the rate of the respiration. It also works as a relay center for signals between the different parts of the brain. So think of the pons as a communication bridge and breathing rhythm control of the brain. So the other part, it's a medulla oblongata. So here you can see the picture of the medulla oblongata, the side view, inside view and also the outside view. This is the lower part of the brain stem, just above the spinal cord. So this medulla oblongata, it connects the brain to the spinal cord. So it serves as a bridge for messages in between these brain and the spinal cord. So what are the functions of the medulla oblongata? It controls the vital autonomic involuntary functions. So which means it manages the body actions that happen without conscious control. So the things that keep you alive. So what are the main functions of medulla oblongata? Heartbeat, breathing rate, rate pleasure and reflex actions. So coming to the heartbeat, this regulates the rate and strength of the heart contractions. So breathing rate, it controls the rhythm and depth of the breathing. When coming to the blood pressure, it adjusts the blood vessel diameter to maintain the pressure. So reflex actions. So it controls coughing, sneezing, vomiting and also the swallowing. So because it regulates the essential life functions, damage to the medulla is the life-threatening one. So even a small injury here, it can stop the breathing or heart function. So medulla oblongata is a life support center of the brain. So this only keeps your heart beating and lungs breathing without you even thinking about it. So you have to be careful about the medulla oblongata. So next coming to the brainstem. Brainstem is nothing but it's a combination of midbrain, pons and medulla. So the brainstem, it's located at the base of the brain and it connects the brain to the spinal cord. So this includes three main parts: midbrain, pons and medulla oblongata. So what are the main functions of the brainstem? It controls the basic life sustaining functions such as breathing, heart rate and also the blood pressure. So it also acts as a communication pathway. It carries the sensory information from the body first to the brain. So it carries the sensory information from body to brain and from there the motor commands from the brain to the body. So it also coordinates the reflexes like cough, swallowing, blinking and eye movements. So next, physiology of the brain. Physiology is nothing but functions of the brain. So brain, it performs several vital psychological functions, right? So let's talk about each and every function clearly. Sensory input and processing. So what do you mean by sensory input and processing? It receives the information from the senses like vision, touch and hearing. It also processes it to create the appropriate responses. So the second function is motor control. Means it sends signals from the brain to muscles for movement. So motor means nothing but movement. So what are the cognitive function? It is responsible for thinking, learning, reasoning, problem solving and also the language. So next function is autonomic regulation. So this maintains the involuntary functions such as breathing, heartbeat, digestion, and the blood pressure. And the last function is emotions and memory. So our brain, it processes the emotions and it also stores the memories, right? It also stores the memories, so mainly by the limbic system. So here you can see the picture, left brain versus right brain. So what does left brain do and what does right brain do? Right brain, it controls the left side of the body. It understands the language and emotion. It helps in creativity and imagination, in spatial awareness, and also the facial recognition and patterns recognition. So what does this left brain do? It controls the right side of the body. So it helps in writing and speaking the language. It also helps in the mathematical and logical reasoning. So this makes the sequential decision making. So left brain means which is easy to remember, like logic and language, whereas right brain, creativity and imagination. So these are the functions of the brain. Now next, coming to the next part, spinal cord. So brain and spinal cord together is called as central nervous system. So what is spinal cord actually? So it is a long tube-like structure made up of nervous system, nervous tissue, as you can see in the picture over here. It starts from medulla oblongata and it runs down to the vertebral column called as spine. So this spinal cord, it also acts as a main communication link between the brain and rest of the body, right? So what are the functions of the spinal cord? It conducts the nerves impulses, means the spinal cord, it carries the messages from brain to the body and from body to the brain. So for example, when you touch a hot object, those sensory nerves send signal to the brain and the brain sends command to move the hand, right? So this helps in conduction of the nerve impulses. So it also helps in reflex actions. The spinal cord, it handles the reflexes which are automatic and quick responses to the stimuli without brain involvement. For example, instantly pulling your hand away from something hot, right? So here you can see the picture of spinal cord. You can see the spinal cord sections and also the nerve groups. So what are the spinal cord sections? Cervical, thoracic, lumbar, sacral and cauda equina. These are all the spinal segments. So cervical, 8 nerve pairs, thoracic, 12 nerve pairs, lumbar, 5 nerve pairs, sacral, 5 nerve pairs and cauda equina. So what are the protective layers called as meninges? So what are the protective layers over here? Pia mater, arachnoid matter and also the dura mater. So these are called as the protective layers of the spinal cord. So next, coming to the anatomy of the spinal cord. So where the spinal cord is located? So it begins at the foramen magnum of the skull. So where it connects the medulla oblongata and it extends down to the vertebral column. So it also ends near the L1 to L2 vertebrae in adults. So tapers into a cone-shaped structure called as conus medullaris. So below this, a bundle of the nerve roots called the cauda equina. It continues downward. So here you can see the cauda equina in the picture. And what are the external features of the spinal cord? So what is the length of the spinal cord? It's about 45 centimeter long in adults. So it is slightly shorter in females. So how the protection of the spinal cord is done? How the spinal cord is protected? It is well protected by three main coverings. So what are they? The vertebral column, the meninges and also the cerebrospinal fluid. So what does this vertebral column do? This spinal cord lies inside the vertebral column or vertebral canal. So it formed by the stacked vertebrae. So this bony structure, it shields it from the injury. So meninges, what are meninges? These are three protective layers called as dura mater, arachnoid mater and pia mater. These cover the spinal cord. So as I shown you in the previous slide, these are the three protective layers. So which protect the spinal cord. So next, coming to cerebrospinal fluid. So this is a clear fluid. It surrounds and cushions the spinal cord. So it provides protecting from the shock and also helps in the nutrition exchange. So how many pairs of spinal nerves are there? Are emerging from the spinal cord. So there are 31 pairs of spinal nerves emerging from the spinal cord. So they connect the spinal cord to different parts of the body, right? For example, here there are cervical 8 pairs. So these function, what is the functionality of these 8 pairs? Neck, shoulders and arms. Whereas coming to thoracic vertebrae, there are 12 pairs. They are presented in the chest and upper back. Whereas lumbar vertebrae, there are 5 pairs and they are present in lower back and legs. So coming to sacral, these are 5 pairs. They are present in pelvis and lower limbs. And coccygeal, 1 pair. It is present in the tailbone area. So each spinal nerve has 2 roots again. One is dorsal and other is ventral. So dorsal is nothing but the posterior side. Ventral is nothing but the anterior side. So this dorsal root, they carry the sensory information into the spinal cord like touch, pain and temperature. So whereas ventral root, it carries the motor information from the spinal cord to muscles and also for movement or response. So the spinal cord is like a main control cable protected by the bones and fluid. So with 31 pairs of nerves that send and receive messages between the brain and the body. So this is the external feature or external structure of the spinal cord. Now let's talk about the internal structure of the spinal cord. So the spinal cord has 2 main parts inside. What are they? Gray matter and white matter. So what is gray matter? You can clearly see over here in the picture the white matter and gray matter. White matter is on the posterior dorsal columns and gray matter is the posterior dorsal horn. So gray matter, it's an inner H-shaped area. You can clearly say it resembles like a H letter. So it is found in the center of the spinal cord. So it looks like letter H or a butterfly shape. So it is made up of neuron cell bodies, dendrites and also the nerve fibers. So what does this do? It is responsible for processing and integrating information. So what are the divisions of the gray matter? Here you have again the gray matter is divided into 3 divisions. So what are they? The dorsal posterior horn, the ventral posterior horn and also the lateral horn. This dorsal posterior horn, it contains the sensory neurons that receive information coming into the spinal cord. What information? Like touch, pain or temperature. Whereas ventral anterior horn, so this contains motor neurons that send signals out to the muscles for movement. Whereas coming to the lateral horn, so this contains autonomic neurons that control involuntary actions like heart rate and digestion. So this is about the gray matter. And coming to the white matter, it is also divided into posterior dorsal columns, anterior ventral columns and also the lateral column. So this white matter, it surrounds the gray matter. So it is made up of myelinated nerve fibers called as axons. So this help to carry the signals quickly, right? So these fibers, they form the nerve tracts that send messages up and down the spinal cord. So what are the divisions of the white matter? As I said you before itself, anterior front column, posterior back column and lateral side column. So each column contains the ascending tracts which carry the sensory information to the brain, and it also has the descending tracts. They carry the motor commands from the brain to the body. So in simple way, gray matter is nothing but it's a processing center. For example, neurons. White matter is, it's a communication cables. For example, axon pathways. So together they help the spinal cord to receive, to process and also to send the signals between the brain and body, right? So coming to central canal. So the central canal, it's a tiny hollow tube that runs through the center of the spinal cord. So how this central canal is filled? It is filled with the cerebrospinal fluid. a clear fluid that nourishes the spinal cord tissue. It also protects it by acting as a cushion or shock absorber. So what are the functions of the spinal cord mainly? So it performs two main functions. So the one is the spinal cord acts as a communication highway. So it's the second one, it also acts as a reflex center. So coming to conduction pathway or conduction highway. So communication highway, it acts as a communication highway between the brain and rest of the body, right? So this carries the message up and down through the nerve tracts. So again, you have types of tracts over here, ascending one and a descending one. So ascending tract, it carries the sensory information like touch, pain and temperature from the body to the brain. Whereas descending motor tract, it carries the motor commands from the brain to the muscles and glands, allowing the movement and action. So coming to the another action of the spinal cord is reflex center. So how does it perform as a reflex center? So it can produce quick automatic responses which are called as reflexes. So these reflexes, they do not need brain involvement. They just help to protect the body from the harm. For example, pulling your hand away when you touch something hot. So this is example of an reflex. So the spinal cord, it sends the message as nothing but conduction, and also the controls the reflexes is nothing but the protection. So the two main functions of the spinal cord is conduction and protection. Yeah, this is all about today's session. In the next session, you are going to learn about the peripheral nervous system and also the autonomic nervous system. Thank you.